The sky above Colony 7 burned orange with the fires of war. Thick smoke rolled across the once peaceful streets as the dark swarm ships continued their relentless bombardment. Among the ruins of what had been a thriving alien community, a small figure lay trapped beneath the collapsed remains of her home. Lily pressed herself against the cold ground, her luminescent skin dimming with fear. Her species, known for their ability to glow in times of joy, now barely flickered in the darkness. The young alien girl could hear the heavy footsteps of dark swarm soldiers moving through the streets, their harsh voices calling out commands in their guttural language. She tried to move, but the debris pinned her lower body to the ground. Tears rolled down her face, mixing with the dust that covered her delicate features. Her forearms trembled as she attempted to push away a beam that had fallen across her legs, but it wouldn't budge. The sounds of battle grew closer. Energy weapons discharged nearby, their distinctive whine cutting through the air. Lily could hear a different kind of gunfire now, the sharp crack of human weapons. The peacekeepers had arrived, but would they find her in time? Through a gap in the rubble, she watched armored figures moving through the smoke. Their black boots stepped carefully around debris, weapons at the ready. One pair of boots stopped near her hiding place. Lily wanted to call out, but fear kept her silent. What if it was a dark swarm soldier? Life signs in this sector, a human voice called out, getting a reading from under that collapsed structure. The boots turned toward her location, and Lily saw a human soldier kneel down. His helmet's visor retracted, revealing a kind face with concerned eyes. This was Sergeant Jack Wilson, though Lily wouldn't learn his name until much later. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, his voice carrying clearly through his suit's speakers. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to help." Lily's glow brightened slightly at his gentle tone. She reached out with one of her upper arms, and Jack carefully took her small hand in his armored glove. "Command, this is Wilson. I've got a civilian here, juvenile, trapped under debris, requesting immediate assistance for extraction." The reply came back quickly and harsh. "Negative, Wilson. Dark swarm forces are advancing on your position. All units are ordered to fall back to extraction point Delta. Leave the civilian." Jack looked at Lily's frightened face, then back at the smoke-filled street where he could hear the approaching enemy. He made his decision in an instant. "Sorry, Command. You're breaking up. Wilson out." He switched off his comm and turned back to Lily. "Let's get you out of there, okay?" Using his powered armor's enhanced strength, Jack carefully lifted the debris trapping Lily. The young alien girl scrambled free, her legs weak but unbroken. Without hesitation, Jack scooped her up in his arms. "Hold on tight," he said, and Lily wrapped all four arms around his armor's neck. They moved through the burning colony, Jack alternating between running and taking cover. Twice they had to hide from dark swarm patrols. Each time, Jack kept Lily calm by speaking softly to her, explaining what he was doing and promising to keep her safe. When a dark swarm soldier spotted them, Jack shielded Lily with his own body while returning fire. The action earned him a nasty burn across his face from an energy weapon, but he didn't slow down. Finally, they reached the human defensive line. Medical teams rushed forward to help, and Jack carefully handed Lily over to them. As they began treating her for shock and minor injuries, Lily's glow pulsed brightly for the first time since the attack began. "Thank you," she said in careful, accented English. Jack smiled, despite the pain from his burn. "You're safe now, little one. That's all that matters." An officer was storming toward them, likely to reprimand Jack for disobeying orders, but neither Jack nor Lily cared. In that moment, they had proved that even in humanity's darkest hours, compassion could still light the way forward. The medical bay of the human rescue ship hummed with activity. Lily sat on an examination table, her luminescent skin casting a soft glow over the sterile white walls. The doctors had treated her injuries and given her a warm blanket, but her eyes kept searching the crowded room for the soldier who had saved her. Jack stood at attention before his commanding officer in a nearby corridor, his face still bearing the raw burn from the energy weapon. The officer, Colonel Reed, was not happy. "You disobeyed a direct order, Sergeant Wilson," Reed said, his voice tight with anger. "You could have gotten your entire squad killed." "Yes, sir," Jack replied, standing straight despite his exhaustion. "But I couldn't leave her behind." Reed's expression softened slightly. "Your heart's in the right place, Wilson, but this is war. We're being reassigned to the front lines. The refugees, including your little alien friend, are being evacuated to Safe Haven Moon." Jack's heart sank. Safe Haven Moon was on the other side of the sector, as far from the fighting as possible. He knew it was the right choice, but something about leaving Lily alone didn't sit well with him. "Sir, request permission to." "Denied." Reed cut him off. "We need every soldier we have. You're one of our best, Wilson. The front line is where you belong." In the medical bay, Lily could sense something was wrong. The other refugees were being moved to transport ships, but no one would tell her where her rescuer had gone. Her glow dimmed with worry. A kind nurse noticed her distress. "Are you looking for the soldier who brought you in? The one with the burn on his face?" Lily nodded eagerly. "I'll see if I can find him for you before you have to leave." Minutes later, Jack appeared in the medical bay doorway. His face had been treated, though the burn would surely leave a scar. He walked over to Lily, trying to smile despite knowing what was coming. "Hey there, little one," he said softly. "I heard you're heading somewhere safe." Lily's lower hands clutched the blanket while her upper hands moved in nervous patterns. "You're not coming?" she asked in her careful English. Jack shook his head. "I have to stay and fight, to make sure the bad ones can't hurt anyone else." He saw the fear return to her eyes and quickly added, "But don't worry. Where you're going, there are lots of nice people who will take care of you." Lily's glow dimmed even further. Jack couldn't bear to see her so sad. He reached up and began removing something from his uniform's shoulder. "Here," he said, holding out his unit patch. It showed a silver shield with a star in its center. "This means protection. As long as you have it, you'll remember that humans will always help those in need." Lily took the patch with all four hands, holding it like it was made of precious crystal. Her glow brightened slightly as she traced the design with her fingers. "Final call for Refugee Transport 7. A voice announced over the speakers. "That's your ride," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. "Stay safe, little one. Maybe we'll meet again someday." Lily surprised him by suddenly wrapping all four arms around him in a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered. A nurse came to guide Lily to the transport. As she walked away, she kept looking back at Jack, clutching the patch to her chest. Jack stood at attention and gave her a proper military salute, which made her glow pulse briefly with joy despite her sadness. The last Jack saw of her was a small, luminescent figure disappearing into the transport ship. He watched until the ship's doors closed and it lifted off, carrying its precious cargo to safety. "Time to move out, Wilson," Colonel Reed called from behind him. "The war's not over." Jack straightened his shoulders and turned away from the viewport. He had a job to do, but he would never forget the little alien girl who taught him that some things were worth risking everything for. 10 years could change many things, but some memories remained as fresh as yesterday. Lily stood before her mirror, adjusting her formal diplomatic robes. Her luminescent skin glowed with a steady, mature light now, no longer flickering with the uncertainty of youth. On her desk lay a worn military patch, its silver shield and star still visible despite the years. She picked up the patch, running her fingers over its familiar surface. All four of her hands moved in the same practiced pattern they had followed countless times before. This simple piece of cloth had guided her path over the years, reminding her of the kindness humans were capable of. Across the galaxy, in a military command center, Jack sat in his office reviewing battle reports. The burn scar on his face had faded to a pale line, and his uniform now bore the ranks of major. His walls displayed commendations for bravery, but his most prized possession was a simple photograph. a group of refugee children he'd helped evacuate from another dark swarm attack. Major Wilson, his assistant, called from the doorway. "The Defense Council is ready for your briefing." Jack nodded, gathering his materials. Over the years, he'd risen through the ranks not just through combat prowess, but through his insistence on protecting civilians, regardless of their species. Some called it his weakness. He considered it his strength. In her chambers on Safe Haven Moon, now a thriving diplomatic hub, Lily prepared for another day of negotiations. She had surprised many by choosing to become a diplomat rather than hide from the horrors of her childhood. But she knew better than anyone how important it was to build bridges between species. "Ambassador," her aide said, entering with a datapad, "the Trade Federation is requesting your input on the new protection treaties." Lily's glow brightened slightly. Protection of others had become her life's work. The scared child rescued from the rubble had grown into someone who helped create safeguards for all species. Neither Jack nor Lily knew they were working toward the same goals from different ends of the galaxy. While he secured military alliances to stand against the Dark Swarm, she built diplomatic frameworks to prevent future conflicts. Sometimes, during quiet moments, Jack would wonder about the little alien girl he'd saved. He hoped she had found peace and happiness in her new life. He never expected that she had become one of the most respected voices for interspecies cooperation. Lily, in turn, often thought about her rescuer. She had tried to find him over the years, but military records from that chaotic time were incomplete. She only knew him as the kind-faced soldier who had risked everything to save her. His patch remained her talisman, reminding her that one person's courage could change everything. One evening, as Jack finished another long day of strategic planning, he paused by his office window. The stars stretched out before him, countless worlds full of people who needed protection. His hand unconsciously touched the scar on his face, and he smiled. That long-ago choice to save one child had shown him his true purpose. In her chambers, Lily held the patch up to the same starlit sky. Her glow pulsed gently as she remembered the soldier's words. "This means protection. As long as you have it, you'll remember that humans will always help those in need." She had done more than remember. She had turned those words into action, helping forge alliances that protected millions. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats to face. But tonight, both Jack and Lily, unknown to each other, looked at the same stars and remembered a moment of compassion that had changed both their lives forever. Little did they know that the galaxy had plans to bring their paths together once again, and soon. The Unity Conference Center buzzed with activity as delegates from 30 different species gathered for the annual Peace Summit. Security was tight, with both human and alien forces working together to protect the assembled diplomats. Lily stood backstage, all four hands smoothing her formal robes one final time. The patch sat in a small pocket near her heart, as it always did during important moments. Today she would present her proposal for a unified defense initiative, something that would help protect vulnerable colonies like her childhood home had once been. "Ambassador, you're on in 5 minutes," an aide whispered. In the Security Command Center, Jack reviewed the final safety protocols. As head of conference security, he had spent weeks preparing for this event. His eyes scanned the multiple video feeds showing the Grand Hall. Major Wilson, his second-in-command, reported, "All sectors are secure. The first speaker is ready to begin." Jack nodded, his attention caught by the main stage feed. Something about the alien diplomat preparing to speak tugged at his memory. Her luminescent skin reminded him of. But no, it couldn't be. Lily walked onto the stage, her natural glow brightened by the spotlight. The audience fell silent as she began her address. 10 years ago, she started, her English now perfect after years of practice. "I was a child trapped in the rubble of war. Today I stand before you because one person chose compassion over orders." In the security center, Jack leaned forward. His hand unconsciously touched the scar on his face. "We speak often of unity," Lily continued, "but I have seen it in action. I have witnessed how a single act of kindness can bridge the gap between species. Today, I propose we transform individual acts of protection into a unified shield for all." As she outlined her proposal, Jack couldn't take his eyes off the screen. The way she moved her forehands in familiar patterns, the specific tone of her glow. Memories from that burning colony flooded back. "Sir," his second-in-command asked, noticing his intense focus. "It's her," Jack whispered, "the little one from Colony 7. Lily felt the familiar weight of the patch in her pocket as she concluded her speech. The audience applauded, many delegates rising to their feet. Her proposal had been well received, but something else caught her attention. Through the stage lights, she noticed movement in the security area. A human officer had stepped forward slightly, his face bearing a distinctive scar. Her glow pulsed suddenly brighter with recognition. Their eyes met across the crowded hall. Time seemed to slow as memories aligned with reality. Lily's hands instinctively moved to the pocket holding the patch, while Jack straightened to his full military posture. "Major," his second-in-command said urgently, "we need to begin moving delegates to the reception area." "Right," Jack replied, his voice rough with emotion. "Standard security protocols." But his eyes never left the stage. As Lily was escorted from the podium, her aide noticed her distraction. "Ambassador, is everything all right?" "Yes," Lily answered, her glow fluctuating with excitement. "Everything is perfect." After all these years, she pulled out the worn patch, its silver shield catching the light. The conference hall slowly emptied as delegates moved toward the reception. But two people remained rooted in place, separated by a room, but connected by a moment from long ago, when humanity's compassion had shone its brightest. The recognition had happened. Now, after 10 years, the soldier and the child he saved would finally meet again. Not as rescuer and victim, but as equals working toward the same dream of a protected galaxy. The conference reception hall sparkled with floating lights, but none shone brighter than Lily as she made her way through the crowd. Delegates parted before her, many wanting to discuss her proposal, but she politely excused herself. Her forehands clutched the old military patch as she moved with purpose toward the security area. Jack stood by the main entrance, outwardly maintaining his professional composure while his heart raced. He watched her approach, still amazed at how the frightened child he carried from the rubble had grown into such a distinguished figure. They met in a quiet corner of the hall, away from the busy crowds. For a moment, neither spoke. Lily's glow pulsed with emotion, creating a gentle aurora around them. "Hello, little one," Jack finally said, his voice soft with memory. "Though I guess you're not so little anymore." Lily's eyes brightened at the familiar greeting. All 4 of her hands moved at once, 2 reaching out to touch the scar on his face, 2 holding up the patch he'd given her so long ago. "I kept it safe," she said, her voice steady despite her glowing skin betraying her emotions. "All these years, it reminded me of hope." Jack gently touched the patch, his fingers brushing against hers. "I never knew if you made it safely to Haven Moon. Those were chaotic times, but I would think about you, hoping you'd found peace." "I found more than peace," Lily replied. "I found purpose. Your act of kindness showed me what was possible when someone chooses to help, even at great cost." She gestured to his scar. Jack smiled, unconsciously touching the old wound. "This? A small price to pay. Seeing you now, knowing what you've accomplished, that makes it worth it 1,000 times over." A small crowd had begun to notice their interaction. Whispers spread through the reception as people recognized the legendary ambassador having an intense conversation with the head of security. "Is it true?" one delegate asked another. "Is she the child from the Colony 7 rescue?" Lily heard the whispers but didn't care. She had waited 10 years for this moment. "After I reached Haven Moon, I tried to find you. But the war had scattered so many records. I was transferred between units," Jack explained. "Promoted a few times. Ended up in charge of protecting people instead of fighting. Seemed right somehow. Because of what happened that day. Jack nodded. Saving you taught me that sometimes the most important victories don't come from following orders, but from following your heart. Lily's glow brightened even further. She opened all 4 arms in a gesture her people used to show complete trust and gratitude. Would you honor me with an embrace, as we did when we parted? Jack's professional demeanor melted away. He stepped forward, and Lily wrapped all 4 arms around him, just as she had as a child. This time, though, it wasn't a goodbye. Thank you, she whispered, just as she had 10 years ago. Not just for saving me, but for showing me what humanity truly stands for. Around them, the reception continued, but in that moment, they were back in that burning colony, not in the fear and chaos, but in that pure moment of compassion that had changed both their lives. When they finally stepped apart, both knew this wasn't an ending, but a new beginning. The soldier and the ambassador, the protector and the peacemaker, had found each other again, and together they would work to ensure that the galaxy remembered what one simple act of kindness could achieve. So, Ambassador, Jack said with a warm smile, tell me more about this unified defense initiative of yours. Lily's glow pulsed with joy. Actually, Major, I was hoping you might help me with that. The conference center's secure command room hummed with tension as Lily and Jack stood before a holographic display of recent Dark Swarm movements. Her glow cast shifting shadows on the wall, while his scarred face was illuminated by the red warning markers spreading across the star map. They're gathering again, Jack explained, pointing to several cluster points. But something's different this time. The pattern isn't like their usual attack formations. Lily studied the map with all 4 hands moving in complex analytical patterns. These positions, her glow dimmed with concern. They're not preparing for a direct assault. They're creating a net. A net. Look here, she said, her hands tracing lines between the Dark Swarm positions. They're not targeting military installations or colonies. They're positioning themselves along major trading routes. Jack's eyes widened as he saw the pattern emerge. They're not planning to destroy. They're planning to strangle, cut off supplies, communications, travel between allied worlds. A siege on a galactic scale, Lily finished. And the worst part, most worlds won't even know they're in danger until it's too late. The door burst open as Colonel Reed, Jack's old commanding officer, now a general, entered the room. Wilson, we need to. He stopped short at seeing Lily. Ambassador, this is a restricted military briefing. She stays, Jack said firmly. Sir, we've discovered something critical about the Dark Swarm's plans. As they explained their findings, Reed's face grew increasingly grave. If you're right, we have less than a week before they complete their positioning. But the Defense Council won't convene for another month. Then we need to find another way, Lily said, her glow strengthening with determination. I have contacts among the trading guilds, colony leaders, independent fleet captains, and I have connections throughout the military, Jack added. People who'll listen, who'll act even without official orders. Reed looked between them, seeing not just an alien ambassador and a human officer, but 2 people who understood what was truly at stake. Like you did on Colony 7, Wilson. Jack straightened. Yes, sir. Sometimes you have to act because it's right, not because it's ordered. Then do it, Reed said. Both of you. I'll handle the official channels, but we'll need your unofficial network too. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Lily's diplomatic access codes connected them to leaders across the galaxy, while Jack's military credentials opened secure channels. Together, they wove a web of their own, not to trap, but to protect. Independent captains agreed to run extra supplies to vulnerable worlds. Colony defense forces began quiet preparations. Trading guilds altered their routes, creating backup plans for essential deliveries. It's like that day in the colony, Lily said during a brief quiet moment. One person's choice to help leading to something bigger. Jack nodded, remembering carrying her through the burning streets. But this time, we're not alone. Look how many are choosing to help. The holographic display now showed new markers appearing, green dots representing their growing network of allies. Each point of light represented someone willing to stand against the darkness. The Dark Swarm think they understand strength, Lily said, her glow bright and steady. They see it as the power to destroy, to control. But real strength is in protecting others, Jack finished. In standing together. They looked at the growing constellation of green lights, so different from the red markers of the Dark Swarm. It wasn't just a defense network they were building. It was proof that the galaxy had learned what one human soldier had demonstrated years ago. That true power comes not from fear, but from the choice to help others. We're going to need more than this, Jack said, studying the display. We need to show everyone what's coming. Lily's glow pulsed with sudden inspiration. The Unity Conference. It's not over yet, and I think I know exactly how to use it. The main hall of the Unity Conference Center was packed beyond capacity. Emergency sessions weren't common, but when both a respected ambassador and a decorated human officer called for one, people listened. Lily stood on the stage, her glow steady and bright, while Jack stood beside her in full dress uniform, his scared face serious but calm. The old military patch was pinned between them on a display screen, enlarged for all to see. 10 years ago, Lily began, her voice carrying across the silent hall. This patch was given to me by a human soldier who chose to save one alien child, despite orders to retreat. Today, we all face a similar choice. The holographic display activated, showing the Dark Swarm positions. Gasps echoed through the crowd as Jack stepped forward. The enemy believes they can isolate us, divide us, make us easy targets, he said clearly. But they don't understand what we learned years ago in Colony 7. That true strength comes from protecting each other. Lily's forehands moved in perfect sync with the display, showing the network they'd built. Already, hundreds of ships, colonies, and trading guilds have joined our defense network. But we need more. We need all of you. The next hour was a blur of evidence, testimonies, and plans. As they finished, silence filled the hall. Then, one by one, delegates began to stand. The Mining Federation stands with you, called one voice. The Outer Rim colonies pledge our support, came another. More and more voices joined, until the hall thundered with declarations of unity. Lily's glow pulsed with joy while Jack stood tall, his hand unconsciously touching his scar, the mark of his first choice to protect. In the days that followed, their plan unfolded like a blooming flower. When the Dark Swarm moved to spring their trap, they found their net had holes. Supply ships jumped through hidden routes. Colonies that should have been isolated were well stocked and defended. Every attempt to divide was met with unity. 1 month later, Lily and Jack stood in the same command room where they'd made their discovery. But now the holographic display showed very different scenes. Dark Swarm ships retreating, their grand plan falling apart in the face of unprecedented cooperation between species. They never saw it coming, Jack said, smiling. They thought they understood humanity's weakness, our tendency to protect others even at cost to ourselves. They didn't realize it's actually our greatest strength. Not just humanity's strength, Lily corrected, her glow warm and bright. All of us learned from your example. One act of kindness created ripples that never stopped spreading. She reached into her robes and pulled out the old patch, now framed in crystal. This symbol of protection has become something bigger than either of us imagined. Jack looked at the patch, then at the displays showing hundreds of worlds working together. Maybe that's what it was always meant to be, not just a reminder of one rescue, but a beginning of something greater. The door opened as General Reed entered, followed by representatives from a dozen species. Ambassador Major, he said formally, the Council has approved your proposal. The Joint Protection Force is now official. Lily and Jack shared a look of triumph. Their new organization would combine military and diplomatic powers, dedicated to protecting all sentient life, regardless of species. It was everything they'd worked for. "Looks like we'll be working together permanently," Jack said with a smile. "As it should be," Lily replied, her glow brightening. The soldier and the child he saved, helping others write their own stories of hope. Outside the command center's windows, ships from 100 worlds moved in formation, their lights shining like stars against the darkness. Each one carried beings who had chosen to stand together, to protect rather than destroy. The galaxy would remember this as the moment when everything changed. But for Lily and Jack, it was simply the natural conclusion to a story that began with one simple choice, made in the rubble of a burning colony. A choice that proved humanity's greatest strength was not its power to fight, but its willingness to protect.